Second time reading The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. I've never read a book where I actually yelled out of anger. Am I missing anything here? Why do people like this? Hello guys and welcome to I Love Reading, a channel about interesting book-related subreddit topics. If you love our content, please press the like button, leave a comment and lastly, if you're new here, subscribe to our channel. Now let's get started. Second time reading it for a class. First time I read it was 2 years ago. And now I'm reading it again for another class. This is the only book that when I finished reading, I actually thought that was stupid. I usually like to look at things from a different perspective. I have never just flat out thought that a book was so useless, so boring, so irritating, and so stupid. Seriously, what is that ending? This book irritates me so much. I've never read a book that gets me so irritated. I even went on a rant protesting us having to read this book. I like reading books, but this book. Anything I am missing here? I feel like lots of people rave about it, but it honestly just sucks, and I can't think of a specific person who actually endorses it. Is it just something that everyone thinks they're supposed to like? From my experience, the people who raved about this book as being inspiring, mind-opening yada yada, were people who would normally only read gossip magazines, and this book was probably the only one they read in the last 10 years. The real treasure was inside you the entire time. There, I just saved you 200 boobless pages. But you wouldn't have found it inside you if you had not taken the journey. You have to get away from everything you know to appreciate what you had. That's the bigger point. Don't worry if you don't like it. After traveling a lot and hearing other travelers wax poetic about it, I picked it up and was wholly disappointed. Actually, to this date I rate it among the worst books I've ever read, and probably the worst one I've ever finished. It's an incredibly shallow and uninspiring story, so just do the work associated with the book and move on. The Alchemist is one of those books read mainly by people who want a self-help guide, not a proper fun story. But it's not self-helpful. But it is, if you manage to wrap your head around the message and apply it to your own life. It's not the goal that is what is worthwhile, it is the journey and the experience you get in trying to reach that goal that is the real treasure. Don't remember much from it. I read it in high school about 12 years ago, but I remember liking it then. But I do love desert imagery and books about spiritual journey like Siddhartha and Endymion, so I'm biased. Sand Captains by Love George is a lot better, and it has sand too. There is no point in reading an author just because of patriotism. I have tried to read 2 different books by José Saramago, and I couldn't. It wasn't because it was too difficult. It was because it was pointless and full of its own importance. I read it years ago because a girl I was dating told me it was her favorite book and the greatest thing she had ever read. I tried to smooth it over because she was from Brazil and had read it in Portuguese. I assumed something was lost in translation, but the relationship didn't last long once I told her my actual opinion of the thing. I absolutely agree with the original poster. I didn't like it either. I think it mostly appeals to people that don't read a lot of fiction and only gave their memories of books they read in high school to compare it to. The first few chapters were okay, but then it gets really sloppy really fast. Plus I hated the way it portrayed women as far as I remember. Taste in literature is subjective. I loved The Alchemist and found it quite moving, although Siddhartha is still my favorite book of that type. I think all literature classes are just to teach kids that books have themes, and so teachers assign the worst, most heavy-handed garbage books ever written, like The Alchemist, or Lord of the Flies, or Catcher in the Rye, or anything by Steinbeck. And then the first book a kid reads that opens their eyes and makes them go, oh, books have themes. That's what my teacher keeps droning on about. Is a book they'll cherish and defend for life. And if they never have that book then they just talk about Harry Potter forever. You don't need to like everything. I enjoyed The Alchemist, it was a fun little read. It's all about perspective. I hated the Harry Potter books, I hated the Star Wars and Star Trek films, and I hated Game of Thrones. You don't need to enjoy everything. True. I don't think the thing is about enjoyment, though. It's just that there is a lot of people that treat this as a literally masterpiece and life-changing, and it's just not that big of a deal. The Alchemist probably means more to someone who isn't used to read many spiritual-based works. Personally, having read lots of said works, I found The Alchemist's message pretty shallow, but I didn't really hate the book either. You're not alone, I also think it's really bad. The repetition and fairy tale style of might make it a really good read for young children though. I really enjoyed the book. Admittedly, I thought the ending was disappointing and cliché, especially when it had so much potential. For me, it was the atmosphere and characters that made The Alchemist so amazing. The atmosphere throughout the story felt ancient and dreamy. It uses an older, almost fairy tale-like form of storytelling, combining elements of religious mysticism, magical realism and a dash of adventure. Beyond the atmosphere, the characters were interesting and unique. I found Santiago to be pretty relatable, which is also one of the reasons why I thought he was so likable. Santiago is naive, curious, open-minded, but a bit unsure of himself. He's the perfect MC to lead us through a spiritual journey. The supporting characters also bring their own perspectives on pursuing and attaining dreams. While the entire story laments the importance of dreams, the different characters brought depth to that idea. For instance, the glass crystal seller that Santiago worked for did not want to go to Mecca because for him, having the dream of one day visiting the holy city was more important than actually visiting. The glass seller built his life around this dream, but actually achieving it would destroy all meaning he had created for his life. Irrespective of whether you agree with it, it's a very unique and thought-provoking idea. Paulo Coelho is like the Drake of literature. People listen to him because, I don't know. The Valkyries is somewhat palatable, but that's about it. If you really want to get your blood boiling, read Aleph. Not to be confused with the Aleph. I didn't get it either. I remember it was all over the bookstores about 10 years ago, not sure why specifically then since it was written a while ago, maybe they had just translated it to Finnish or just decided to republish, and it was raved about, and I was sure it must be a great book. I've been meaning to read it since, this year I finally did and it was so disappointing. You know what? When I read it first about a year and a half ago, I've only read it the one time, I thought it was underwhelming and some pseudo-spiritual BS. But since reading it all that time ago, I've realized there's a lot of truth in that book. Yes, the whole message of the journey and giving up everything and the treasure and all that is painfully obvious. But other parts, like the whole universe conspiring to help you stuff, are, while less obvious, universal truths. When I first read that, I thought it was more bull the author inserted, but through my own experience, I've come to realize that if you flow with the universe, offer no resistance and give acceptance, outcomes and events will naturally work in your favor. The MC needed all those misfortunes to happen to him for him to find the treasure, again, obvious. The choice lied with him on whether to judge his situations as bad or good, since it's a story, and most of them are bad, it's natural for him to feel indignant over all he suffered, while in actuality, each moment was a manifestation of the universe's plan for him, regardless of how he perceived the events in the story. I remember liking it as a school kid. I am sure I won't now. A book I share this same emotion with is Siddhartha, annoyed me to the core. Like it or not, you got anger issues, buddy. There you have it, interesting comments by Reddit users on The Alchemist book by Paulo Coelho. Note: books talked about in the video can be accessed through the link on the description below. Thank you for watching till the end. If you loved the video, don't forget to press the like button and also subscribe to I Love Reading. See you on the next video.